Welcome to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen. Today, we are diving into a very powerful idea branding as the ultimate tiebreaker to show the wholesome, holistic, big picture impact of branding. In this discussion with Kevin Lee, what comes out is in a world full of choices, why do customers pick one brand over another? It's never just the features or price, it's the emotions. That's the wholesome approach of branding because we are all in the feeling business, and the feeling business comes when a brand connects to our heart right here. Branding is what makes the difference when everything else feels equal. Think you're at a grocery store. Tomatoes are tomatoes till you start seeing this one set of tomatoes with vines on it. Then you see another set of tomatoes with a little story of the farm. Now you want that tomato. Think about brands like Nike. It's not about the shoes. It's about the identity. It's about the perseverance. It's about pushing you to the limits. You feel when you wear those Nike shoes, you'll just do it. Go a little beyond. Or Apple, where simplicity and creativity creates a sense of belonging and status. I feel good when I hold my iPhone. Very important. Is it the best phone? I don't know. But feeling good defines it. And then there's brand like Disney, a masterclass in storytelling, where the promise of magic is consistently delivered through every experience. All these are brands that have thrived over the years because they look at the wholesome way of looking at branding, feeling business. At the heart of all this success is storytelling. But there's also a challenge. Today, consumers are busy, distracted, and constantly getting interrupted. So your story has to earn the attention. It has to be relevant, authentic, and worth their time. When you interrupt a consumer, a customer, to tell your story, the customer should not whoosh you. The customer should not right away say, no, thank you. The customer should say, glad you shared the information with me. Glad you interrupted. Because now I feel good. I have a choice to make. And then, as you start going through this whole thing, there's a balance your brand must strike. I know we have heard this over and over again that short-term wins come from capturing existing demands. Without short-term, there's no long-term. But being present where customers are already searching is very important. Long-term success comes from building the emotional connection and brand memory from the first interaction. And one of the big things that hit me in the conversation with Kevin was you don't need to win every customer every time. You need to win your most valuable customers and become their number one choice, because it's tough to be all things to all people. Because at the end, your brand is not what you say it is. You make a promise, but it's the experience and what your customers say when you're not in the room, what they remember, that wholesome nature of the brand that stays right here is your brand. Enjoy this conversation. Kevin Lee is co-founder and executive chairman of Did It, a leading digital marketing agency helping clients win across industries from Fortune 500 to startups. While Did It started in SEO and PPC search, over the last 5 years, Did It has made 11 acquisitions to transform itself into a full-service marketing firm while retaining technology at the core. Kevin also co founded WeCare.com, which has generated 8 million plus for nonprofits. Welcome to Secrets to Win Big, Kevin Lee.
Happy to join you. Thanks for having me on.
So, Kevin, knowing that you have over all these years put so much of amazing wisdom content out there, I really wanted to maximize on this great opportunity to have a conversation with you to go to the core of Kevin, to look at with all these years of experience, all these years of wisdom. I wanted to literally drown there to find some amazing nuggets. And I want to start at a very simple place. What is branding? What is the purpose? Why do we need branding?
To me, branding is the ultimate tiebreaker. When a consumer or a B2B purchaser is making a decision, usually there isn't one brand that overwhelmingly is the choice. And so, in the end, whether it's at the point of purchase or the online retail or during the B2B buying process, the real function of a brand is to tap into emotion to be the great tiebreaker, right? Features and products and benefits, those are all great. And if everyone were just an AI, then they could make the decision based on that. But when it comes to humans and the way they buy, the tiebreaker is often emotional, and that's the brand. The brand is that tiebreaker.
So you're starting at a great place that many a time we forget that consumers in B2B, B2C have a choice. We are not the only choice. So starting with that respect that is there. As you start with the choice, how do you take the choice to an emotional win for consumers in both those worlds every time?
It really is, I think, driven off of storytelling. Um, the brand has its ethos, it has its mission, but the way to convey that is through storytelling. And some of the best advertising over the years and some of the best marketing over the years has tapped into storytelling. I think that's the driver behind the explosion of creator or influencer marketing, whatever you want to call it, is that the influencers have the ability to tell a story, and they tell it from the position of trust already with some portion of the viewership or some portion of the target audience. And so that storytelling takes on a certain authenticity that I think has been lacking in sort of that in between generation of advertising. So you and I grew up with, 30s and 60s and 15-second TV advertising, video advertising being the staple of the marketing plan and the media plan. And then we went through a period where things digitized, and there were static banners on websites, which really don't tell a story particularly well. And so then the explosion of YouTube and the explosion of video online now has this creator layer, and that's sort of illustrating the importance of storytelling in building the brand, in building the brand, the ability of the brand to charge a surcharge that would otherwise be not chargeable, right? That's brand value. I'm sure there are accountants that will actually try to calculate the definitive brand value. How much more will you pay for something that is otherwise a commodity?
To me, when you talk about storytelling, how do you, in a world where the customers, human beings, have the same 24 hours, they're maximizing on every minute, how do we get them to pause and make a story ignore proof worth listening, something for them instead of, hey Kevin, I have a story to tell, I'm running after you in New York City, like run Arjun vanish. Like, how do Kevin stop and say, Arjun, tell me one more story? Like, how do you get into that mode, especially in today's world?
I mean, most advertising is interruptive, right? Your target audience is not interested in consuming your story as the marketer, right? They're interested in something else, with the exception of search engine marketing and now generative AI visibility, where the person expressed a really strong intent and would love to hear your story, right? They want to hear the story that resonates with their current problem or the current thing they're researching. Other than that, all other advertising is interruptive. So there's a high bar, right? Because in the ADD world, the ADD nation, right, you have to figure out how to break through the clutter and become that shiny object that they're willing to engage with and consume that story. Again, whether it's creator marketing or just really well created creative, it needs to break through the clutter. It needs to interrupt the person's brain and get them to be willing to listen to your story. But the story needs to be relevant to the consumer. So there are some stories that can be relevant to a great number of consumers at any point in time, because a great number of consumers are open to that, whether it's dating or dieting or other life improvement things. You can pretty much break through the clutter with a great story there. Other things are more difficult because you're not always in the market for a new smartphone, right? So the marketer needs to capture your attention and hope that you're in the market for that phone or in the market for a new car lease or in the market for buying a home,
Mhm.
right? Or at least plant the seed so that when you're in the market, you think of that brand first.
And also, I think extending what you were talking about, once I have the smartphone, seeing the story helps me reinforce how Arjun is cooler holding that smartphone, even though it doesn't work in some street corners. But I just feel good about holding this. Kevin, I also want to push you on something you said a few minutes back about how earlier it was a 30 seconds, 15 seconds. From there, we went to static. Now we are influencers. You are not only strategic, but you are also a visionary. You always see where the puck is going with all your acquisitions. Where is storytelling going in 5 years, 10 years, which we need to know? If not, we'll get obsolete.
It's sort of interesting because while short form advertising continues to have a strong place in a media plan, you've also seen a bit of the resurgence of infomercial style storytelling, right? Longer form content that when the story is really well crafted, you find that folks are willing to engage in that. You also have a resurgence of brand placements. Again, these none of these things work in a silo where they're the only touch point. They work really well together, right? Seeing a brand in a movie or a TV show integrated into the story is really valuable. Sometimes you have brands going out and creating their own content as well, becoming the brand as the publisher. I mean, soap operas were called soap operas because they were sponsored by soap companies. And so they were the underwriters of the content, but they didn't necessarily make their way into the content. So I think, this constant push pull between, do I want to surround the content? Do I want to be immersed in the content? Do I want to be part of the story? Do I want to be adjacent to the story that people are willing to trade their time with, right? Time is the human's most valuable asset. So you're getting them to trade their time. There has to be a quid pro quo, right? You have to give them something back in exchange for that time. And entertainment is one of the things that they give back. The idea of the commercial break, right, still exists, right? I mean, you think about the ad supported streaming channels and even broadcast TV, right? There's still this trade, right? In exchange for watching this live sporting event, I'm going to watch Super Bowl ads. Right? So there's a quid pro quo, or maybe you run to the restroom and you don't actually consume the ads. But there has always got to be this quid pro quo, and understanding that as a marketer, I think frames how the marketer should think about marketing, right? And that's the reason, despite the explosion of AI, creative agencies and agencies with creative departments that can think strategically, but then manifest that into the proper placements of stories and the proper placement of brands continues to be important.
As you're talking about it, I remember a Big Bang Theory episode in which Raj those days could not speak to a woman and he falls in love with Siri. And the whole episode builds and builds, and finally, spoiler alert, Raj shows up with roses for Siri. Of course, Raj cannot talk to Siri. But to me, it was such a beautiful placement of the whole concept of Siri as you start going through. And I just think that's the part where there's storytellers and then there are the super giants as you start going through. Now, I want to take this to a real dilemma of today. If I was a CMO of a mid sized to a large brand, I hear this statement over and over again: if there's no short term, there's no long term. I have to make impact now as I start going through. How do I balance between getting tactical and you, in all the companies you have worked with, you have every possible tools you look at. How do you balance everything? to get short term wins, which I need to save my job, and long term wins to move the brand forward.
I like to think about that sort of econometrically, right? Meaning that if you haven't yet built your brand to the point where you can command the attention, in all the channels, and you have the budget to support all those channels. In the beginning, if you do demand harvesting, you can sort of draft on the demand that was created just either by the broader uh, ecosystem, or you can draft on other brands. And the places where that happens are search engine marketing in particular, but also within e-commerce and Amazon, right? So Truth Nutrition can draft off of the awareness that other brands have created around pre-workouts or branched chain amino acids, right? We don't need to be out there buying the Super Bowl spots yet, right? So drafting on somebody else's demand, or finding the demand that's already been created, and just being there at that perfect instance with your story, and guiding the consumer along there, that can allow you to go in and immediately generate revenue, immediately generate leads in B2B SaaS or B2B garbage collection, right? Is people want to get rid of their medical waste, people want to get rid of their garbage in a specific geography, or get their lawns mowed, or find a trust and estates lawyer, right? That demand exists, and you're just jumping in and grabbing it at that perfect time when the intent is high. But in order for that type of advertising to work most efficiently, you want what's called the brand discount, because all of that stuff, whether it's Meta, whether it's Google, it's all auctioned off. And there's a brand discount that manifests itself in various ways. In Google, it's the quality score, right? If your ad is more likely to get clicked than your competition as a result of having brand, as a result of having been exposed to that target audience, you get a brand discount there. So basically, you start at the bottom of the funnel with demand harvesting with your first marketing dollar, and then you move up funnel and continue to invest, understanding the marginal impact of your investments, right? Um, if you have a limited budget. And so that's how I like to approach it if somebody comes to me and says, listen, I need some quick wins, right? I need to be able to show my CFO that some of the money that I'm spending is resulting in an immediate impact. But you reach a plateau pretty quickly if you only rely on demand harvesting.
Mhm.
Eventually, you need to go into brand awareness and demand creation.
Awesome. So, what are common mistakes brands are making? If you could just for a second be in charge, where the world branding, marketing people make no mistakes, what would be something you'll warn us?
I think actually the overfocus of some brands on demand harvesting and cutting back on mid to upper funnel is a mistake that's often made under the guise of sort of austerity, right?
Mhm.
And we're just going to do fiscal austerity, and we don't need to build the brand. We don't need to be up there educating our various target audiences on why we're better, or creating that emotional resonance with those target audiences. And so I think that it's a mistake to not invest in mid to upper funnel. Not everybody has the luxury of doing that, but if you look at the bigger brands, some of them have made that mistake, right? There's been too much of a bottom funnel only focus.
So, as I start going through and connect everything, I always want to win big. How do you win big with branding? What is win big to you?
I think win big is really about being that top of mind, right? And that's where research can still be valuable, right? And understanding whether or not you're top of mind in your category against your most valuable customers. I think that winning big, you don't always have the luxury of winning big against everybody who could be a potential customer, but winning big is becoming the brand of choice for the most valuable customers in your segment. And that requires the data, right? Understanding what the lifetime customer value is of your best customers, and understanding how and why they became your best customers, and applying that to the adjacent customers, to those most valuable customers, and then moving into becoming their favorite brand. and their brand of choice. If you've done that, you're winning big, right? That's where the public markets or the PE firms will give you the highest valuation, right? Because you've demonstrated not just that you're brilliant at creative and you're brilliant at marketing, but that you understand the data that makes your brand the most valuable, right? Because you've used the back end data processing of understanding whether it's ERP or CRM or whatever you're using to understand those most valuable customers and finding more customers like those. That's key.
So I think you just took us on a PhD level discussion because there are so many things, as you were saying. I really want to break these things down. The thing that hit me is not all customers, your most valuable customers. Secondly, you taught me that with those guys, I want to be their number one choice. Okay. That's very important because to be the number three choice of everybody versus the number one choice of those who are not valuable, like to me, that's where the battle is lost right there.
For
And I
sure.
really want to bring out in front what you just shared was really powerful to know. It just goes back to, I just remember in MBA class, what we were taught was segments. Is that a segment worth? Is that big enough? Is it growing? And finally, can you take product and message to them? Like, to me, you took me to the core of how that evolved today. And I think that that would be a huge lesson for brands as you start going through in this journey.
Yeah, because knowing that also, if the CFO forces brand austerity, like marketing spend austerity, I mean, um, that gives you the leverage to know where to cut and where to invest on both sides, right? Because if you get additional budget, because you get another funding round and you're an AI platform, right? And you need to know where to invest it. So you need to know on the upside, where do I invest next? But
Mhm.
you also need to know on the downside, where can I cut back with the least negative impact? And understanding your most valuable customers in B2B, you might call them your ICP, right? Or various ICPs, or your most valuable target or segment in the case of consumer marketing. Understanding that allows you to double down when you've got the budget to double down, and it helps you understand how to cut back in times of austerity. So a lot of folks, it's aspirational for them to even have the back end to know that,
Mhm.
right? And you would think, I mean, you and I both have conversations with brands that are very successful and may have to some extent succeeded in spite of not knowing that, right? Because within their ideal customer set or their ideal segment, they really delight the customer so much experientially, right? That there's been word of mouth, and that's taken the place of a super strategic media buying and marketing plan, right? Because they're just so good at what they deliver, product or service, that they've been able to sort of skate by.
Mhm.
But usually that loses momentum over time, and you eventually need to understand those things about your best audiences and your best segments. So I think it's worth investing in the kind of back end data and analysis so that you can really understand where that is, where those customers are, who they are.
Kevin, I think I found a new career, taking nuggets from Kevin and bringing it to others. Because, again, two things that you put in front is you connected the bridge between creativity, heart, authenticity, and numbers. The thing that hit me was a CMO needs to know impact of everything they do or projected impact. If I don't do this, this is what I can lose. This is if I do, I can do this. Like I'll connect you to something totally outside branding. I'm a Denver Broncos fan, and this year when we lost the AFC championship, there was this fourth down play. And after that, the coach talked about was it was the wrong call because the probability of that giving us the yards was very low. Okay. Like as a marketing officer, chief marketing officer, I need to know if you, as my CEO, want me to get a 18% sales increase, and I have not stacked up my marketing calendar to get to 36 because my batting average is 50, I'm doomed right there. Like I should get
Yeah.
fired even before. And to me, connecting that was huge. And the second nugget I think was hidden was what you showed also, that the brand experience become a media dollar when that turns out to be word of mouth and goes outside, because there are media dollars that you generate by investing in the brand. And to me, that's always not that is there. So to me, I really feel, Kevin, this is such a fascinating, I really am putting myself up for a job that I will follow Kevin, translate Kevin's wisdom, and that becomes a new career. So on a lighter note, Kevin, like you have looked at a lot of brands, let's talk about one or two brands. They don't have to be clients, they could be clients, who cares, but I just want to admire those brands by saying, you say, wow, how cool are they, stories they tell, like some brand or two brands that hit home to you every day.
I mean, it's not every day, but I was thinking about this because you gave me a bit of warning on this question, and I had to really pontificate a bit. And it does tie into one of the last things we discussed, which is brand experience, right? And for me, the brands that make a promise and then fulfill it, right, experientially, are the ones that to me rise above the rest. So I would put Disney down there, right? Now, not their sub brands like media brands, but Disney, the theme park and the movies as well, right? Because they essentially they make a brand promise,
Mhm,
right, that you will be entertained, and then they deliver on it, right? And that ability to deliver on it creates so much earned media and word of mouth uh, velocity, right, and incremental value to the brand, that it allows the media dollars to go so much further, right? Because when they see the Disney brand, when consumers see the Disney brand, they immediately have a recollection or a remembrance of some other Disney touch point.
mhm,
And I think the lesson for the other brands or other CMOs in the audience is, even if you don't technically own the customer experience,
mhm.
make sure that you figure out within your organization how to fulfill the brand promise, deliver on the promise that you're making in your advertising. Because no amount of media dollars, no amount of savvy use of creators and engaging with the Kardashians or whatever you're going to throw your hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars at, none of that will rescue the brand if the brand does not fulfill the brand promise, right? And so, yes, it's not in your job responsibility as a CMO to fulfill the brand experience post purchase, but there's an adjacent, senior marketer or senior manager, probably with a in their title, that probably does own that. And make sure that that the two of you realize you're a team, right? Because together you're building the brand, and together you're building the business.
Yeah, to me, it's like, as you're talking about, it's like a relay race. Understanding me running my leg alone does not work. I need to give the baton to you, and then go outside the track and cheer you. And that is huge.
Yeah, for
As you were
sure.
talking about the example, a few weekends back, Saturday morning, going out to play a round of golf, stopped at Chick-fil-A. It was still dark. As I tried to eat my morning breakfast burrito, and Chick-fil-A is good food, nothing to write home about, it's good food. Okay. I saw something was written on my bag. I turned the lights on, it says, "You are awesome." I took a U-turn. Me being little insecure, I wanted to know that it was written only for me. Okay. I went back to the drive-through, ordered something else, and I just said, "This bag, who wrote this?" The person who was there, his name is Sebastian. Sebastian came and said, "Sir, I wrote it." I said, "How do you do it?" He said, "They gave us 5 or 7 different things, and based on listening to the voice of the person, that's who I felt you are. You are awesome. Go have an awesome day." I felt that was Deepak Chopra or Tony Robbins at Chick fil A for me. But somebody empowered this guy, put a process in, not to write anything and everything, but gave some boundaries. And the coolest part was he remembered. 2 weeks later, I go back, same Sebastian. This time it was written, "You are still awesome." Okay.
That's a great story.
And will I go anywhere else? No. If they increase price, will I complain? Yes, but I'll still go back. And that to me is so important. So I really am glad. Yeah, sorry, you were saying something.
No, I was just going to say that that's the definition of brand premium,
Yeah,
right? Because you have this emotional connection now with the brand, and the price elasticity of your willingness to buy has just gone up pretty dramatically right
just
now.
because they took a marker
Yeah.
and wrote "You are awesome," and they connected to Arjun's insecurity and made me feel good at 5:36 in the morning.
Well, you are awesome, and they were right. So
Thank you, Kevin. I just was trying to prompt you to say that. So thanks. So, Kevin, taking all these things together, anything you want to add about wisdom, anything, how people can find you, any questions you have, this part is all yours. Anything you want.
thank you. I mean, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, although there are a lot of other Kevin Lees. I tend to be pretty easy to find there. People can feel free to connect or reach out to me there. Um, as to any final thoughts, I think that the marketing community is going through a huge transformation at the moment. Like the big overlay is that what used to, in our case, be called SEO, and we've been doing SEO since 1996, has now evolved into GEO, which I really think of as like visibility marketing, right? And that requires that your rest of your marketing be working. So it's really been a fun reminder for myself and my teams that to win in visibility in ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini, it's holistic, right? And it really comes back to tie all the things that you and I discussed together, including experiential, right? Because if people are complaining about your brand on Reddit and complaining in reviews, that's going to depress your visibility in the next generation of visibility, which is answer engine optimization or GEO, whatever you want to call it. The ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, they'll all they'll all be able to immediately know if your brand experience is failing, and I think that's a warning to folks who underinvest either in marketing but also in the ability to fulfill their brand promise.
I love that. And when you talk about brand experience, I just felt if brand experience was a semester in a grad school, the rules are very different. The rules are not your average of all your grades. The rules are your lowest grade is your grade. And that's one of the things. Think with Chick-fil-A, if there was something wrong, let's say I don't eat beef and they gave me, of course, they don't give beef, like they give you something that I would not eat, like that would be their grade to me. So, to me, understanding how experience works, like for you, before you go high, you really have to make sure you have a threshold to build on and build. So, that's fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. And reviews are show that, right? People are much more likely to leave a negative review than a positive review. You know,
Absolutely.
the cost of entry is to delight the customer,
Mhm.
and you just need to make sure there's not too many data points on the negative.
So, I love this conversation. I'm thinking how to name this conversation. I really think the word you gave me is wholesome branding is a great way to intrigue people. So I'm going to call this wholesome branding. So thank you, Kevin, for taking us to school with your experience and sharing from your
My
heart
pleasure.
branding. Thank you, my
Thanks
friend.
so much for having me.